Well, thank you very much. It's such a pleasure to be here tonight with so many of our citizens. I, first of all, bring you all greetings from City Council. I know that many of my City Councillors were here tonight, as Councillor Paul McDonnell and Councillor Pietro Calandino. Councillor Colleen Jordan was here. I don't know if any of other councillors have arrived yet, but they've been at various meetings across Burnaby, but promised they would attend to make sure they were here to show their support for the movement that's happening in Burnaby to oppose the Kinder Morgan expansion. We were way ahead of you. We prepared a city report that looked very carefully at the cost-benefit analysis in regard to this pipeline coming through our community. And as usual, our city staff evaluated the pros and cons in a very dispassionate way and came back saying there's nothing in this for Burnaby except potential damage. We advised Council to oppose it, and Council unanimously opposed the expansion of Kinder Morgan. So you know where Council stands. The difficulty is trying to take Council's position to a provincial and national level. I can remember, and to go back to 2007 when we had the spill in Westridge. When that spill occurred, I was notified immediately by our staff, who did a wonderful job in dealing with what was a brand new problem for them, is an oil spill that was affecting all of our community. And so the city was out there with our engineering staff, our environmental staff, our police and fire department. We're all out there, and I was there with the community. Unfortunately, the Prime Minister wasn't there, and none of the cabinet ministers were there. It was the local government that had to deal with the reality of the problems that were occurring. And it was my first time to deal with Kinder Morgan and how Kinder Morgan was approaching the issue. The pipeline was broken as a result of an accident that occurred when there was construction being done on one of our roadways. And one of the problems that anybody has in doing construction on our roadways is that the maps that they had of where these pipelines were 50 years ago are so convoluted that no one is quite sure where the pipe actually is. All of the markers and roadways have moved over 50 years. And in fact, many of the sites that they built them on have changed considerably, as many of you have seen across our municipality. And so each time we had to do any kind of construction, there was a requirement we had to go through Kinder Morgan in order to find out where these lines were, that we couldn't trust the maps that existed, that in fact when you got within what was supposed to be a few meters of the line, they were supposed to send a Kinder Morgan official out who would stand there and watch while you dug. Efficiency at work. In order to ensure that you didn't hit the pipeline. Well, you know how corporations are. Is that putting people out to watch us dig wasn't high on their priorities. So once they went out and identified where the line was, they said, go ahead, treat it as if it were there. An accident occurred. So what happened as a result of the accident? You would think that a big corporation like this would be prepared for that eventuality, that they would be equipped to deal with a problem like that. So you've got oil that's coming down through gravity from the Trans Mountain tanks that are at the top of Burnaby Mountain. And they're going all the way down the hill to get to the Westridge terminal to be pumped onto a tanker. When the line broke, instead of turning off the line at Trans Mountain on Burnaby Mountain, they turned off the line at the tanker. That meant that all of the oil backed up from the tanker while all the oil kept flowing down the mountain. Now, if you want to see the Keystone Cops in action, try the people that were put in charge of dealing with this emergency. So instead of confining the oil to a ditch and being able to maintain it in that area, it sprayed all over the neighborhood. And unfortunately, the Prime Minister and the Cabinet Minister weren't the ones who were dealing with our residents over the next months. Guess who? I was the one who was answerable to the people in our community for what had happened to their homes. And I met with them over and over again with my staff to try to find ways to fix the problem. And I'll give Kinder Morgan credit, as they came in and they worked hard to try to fix the problem. But how how do you repair the kind of damage that happens as a result of a massive oil spill? How do you make people comfortable about their property, about their health? And how do you end the fear that it could happen again? You can't. So, we saw another pipeline being planned. First thing we did was the same thing Kennedy did, is we started asking questions. And you know, I didn't want to get into national energy policy and dealing with national energy policy. There's enough problems in a little city like ours to keep me busy on an ongoing basis. But what I found out was there is no national energy policy at all. They have absolutely no idea what they want to do with all of that bitumen that is being mined out of the tar sands in Alberta. They leave it to the multinational corporations to decide. That's why we've got lines going across northern British Columbia and Enbridge. We've got twinning lines that are going through Burnaby. We've got the Keystone line going down the United States. And the only people who have absolutely no idea where they want that oil to go is the people in Ottawa, because they have no plan whatsoever. They say the market will decide. Well, the reality is that they are mining that oil out and they're failing to refine it because they want to send it offshore to China, where they know that the environmental regulations are such that they can refine that oil without any of the difficulties that would be imposed upon them in North America. And that means that we'll be handing over those environmental problems to the people in China, and those problems will be drifting back across the Pacific into our communities as a result of those decisions. So not only are we doing ourselves a disservice, not only are we hurting our own community if we allow this to go through, but we're hurting people who are 5,000 miles away from us who didn't do us any harm whatsoever. By sending them this caustic oil and by allowing that oil to be refined in a country without the standards we hold to in North America, we're only creating a problem for someone else that eventually will end up on our back door. So, folks, is it, you know, we have an energy crisis in North America. We've got to deal very carefully with the oil we have available to us. And we've got to preserve those resources for the future because there's a very limited amount of oil for all of us. It is foolish to simply look to the immediate future and to look for the immediate profit when the reality is that those oils will be needed for 100 or 200 years into the future while we find alternative sources of energy. And to impose upon our communities this incredible risk and to risk tanker traffic that will affect the oceans of our world is beyond ridiculous. It is absurdity. And we need to stand up as a community. If we are the only voice across Canada that is heard, we need to, as a community, stand up and say, we are not going to tolerate this foolishness, as we want an energy policy in Canada that answers to Canadian needs first, that ensures our long-term viability as a nation, and that we do not export environmental problems to other parts of the world.